If you truly believe that human potential is limitless, how you decide to spend your time is a spiritual consideration. The first thing to know about me is I am not a born entrepreneur. I was epically lazy, and if they handed out gold medals for being lazy, I would have won, I assure you, hands down. There was a period in my life where I would spend between 2 and 3 hours in bed because it was warm in bed and it was cold out of bed. The narrative about what it means to be an entrepreneur is to be naturally gifted, and I call total bullshit on that. Because I'm not naturally gifted. I don't have any natural talents. And we all learn to do things, and it's that ability to specialize that makes us great. And the things that you choose to put your time and energy into, those are going to be the things that allow you to accomplish something. But all of that is a choice. And we all have a superpower, and my superpower may be the willingness and ability to endure suffering. And I'm not necessarily saying that's always a good thing. And in fact, I want to introduce you to a quote which hopefully most of you know, and this is the positive side of suffering. To those human beings who are of any concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, sickness, ill treatment, indignities. I wish that they should not remain unfamiliar with profound self-contempt, the torture of self-mistrust, the wretchedness of the vanquished. I have no pity for them, because I wish them the only thing that can prove today whether one is worth anything or not. That one endures. Things are going to happen to you if they haven't already, and I'm sure they have. Many tragedies have befallen every person in this room. And what I want you guys to recognize right now is thank God. Because those are the things that weed out the sick and the weak. Those are the things that weed out the people who they don't have the fortitude to see it through. And if you don't need to be an entrepreneur to succeed, but you do need something, what is that something? And I'm here to tell you that something is the ability to endure. My ability to handle suffering, my ability to keep going when something is boring, my ability to learn a new skill long after everybody else has gotten over it and gotten bored and they are no longer interested. All I can see is its utility. And in seeing its utility and becoming obsessed with what that thing is going to allow me to do, I endure. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how painful it is, if it lives in service of my goals, I do it. And that was the one thing nobody could see. That was the one thing when I was a kid nobody could understand. The questions you ask yourself will determine the course of your life. I had been asking myself, what do I need to do to get rich? And it left me really unhappy. So I changed the question, and I started asking, what would I do and love every day, even if I were failing? Life is chaos. It takes an inhuman amount of effort to bring order to that, to find success in the middle of that. So while I cannot promise you success, I can promise you failure. I cannot promise you happiness, but I can promise sadness. So if you know those are the guarantees and the other things are the things that you have to strive for, you better be striving in service of something that in and of itself is interesting to you. There's an awesome quote often attributed to Mother Teresa that says, "No one will act for the many, but people will act for the few." Develop your mindset. Nobody thinks about this. This is crazy to me. If you want to talk about business, don't even worry about the mechanics of business until you get the mechanics of human psychology. If you don't know the anatomy, yes, the anatomy of the human brain, you are at a disadvantage. Why? Because I do know it. If you believe that you're limited in some way, that there's something that you can't accomplish, if there's something that you can't do, it is going to be hard. It is going to be difficult. And finding your way through that maze will be some of the most difficult things that you're ever going to have to do. But if you accept that it's the truth, you become in control. And I invite you all to adopt the following belief system. It's all my fault. Now, I use the word fault because it jabs people in the ribs. It gets people's attention. It makes them angry because they think I'm victim shaming or blaming the victim, and I'm not. I'm saying I refuse to ever be a victim. And if I maintain control, then there's something that I can do about it. The way that I define an entrepreneur is somebody who encounters an obstacle and gets really pissed because the thought of giving up never occurs to them. And now they know they have to go over, under, through it, around it, whatever, but they're not going to slow down and they're not going to stop. Whereas an employee might be a beautiful human being, but when they hit an obstacle, they think, oh, finally I can relax. And I used to be there. And then I remember one day asking, wait a second, if I'm actually trying to get, at the time, rich, then why would I ever want to slack off? Why would I ever want to let off the gas pedal? And if I don't actually want to get rich and what I want is an easy life, why am I doing this weird in between where I work really hard if somebody's watching and then I stop as soon as they're not? If you want to chill, man. I've got no moral judgment on the person that wants to smoke weed all day, hang out, chill, and eat a bowl of munchies. Like, I'm down. If I could ask that it be like maybe a Quest cereal bar or something, that would be awesome. But truly, I don't pass a moral judgment on it. It's just not the life that I want to live. But I wanted to be honest with myself about what life I wanted to live. I accept that we make our beliefs. We choose to believe things. Every belief that you have, and I'll even throw in gravity just to make this really obnoxious, every belief that you have is a choice. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. If you truly believe that human potential is limitless, how you decide to spend your time is a spiritual consideration. Right? Because you can do anything. Here's the hard truth. You're not yet the person you need to be in order to achieve all the things you want to achieve. The great news is you're here because you realize that. Most people fight against that. You're here because you want to learn something. You're here because you're actually open. But what you have to figure out is, what is your kung fu? You have to figure out, what is that set of skills that I need to learn? I used to ask people, what do you think essentially is the meaning of life? And in the beginning I realized it was because I didn't know the answer for myself, and I wanted to hear what other people were going to say. And then in hearing enough people say it and really thinking through my answer, I realized that for me, the very meaning of life is to see how many skills I can acquire that have utility and then put that utility to the test. I want to wring every bit of potential out of myself that's possible. Because having potential is very different than doing something with that potential. And in all of us, I believe, is a massive reservoir of latent potential that can be applied to accomplish the extraordinary. But you have to know what it is. Always be reading. I believe the greatest gift that any great thinker can offer the world is to take the time to write down all of their insights. They say a fool never learns, a smart man learns from his mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. I have spent a lot of time being a fool. I've spent a reasonable amount of time being smart, but oh man, it is precious few times when I've truly been able to be wise and learn from someone else. But virtually every time I was able to get some wisdom, it was at the hands of an author. When people ask me who my mentors were, I always tell them it's the authors that I've read. Books contain the secrets to the universe. If any of you have ever struggled with feeling worthy because you don't have original ideas, do not fret. What makes each and every one of us the beautiful snowflake that we all know that we are inside is that we make unique connections between old ideas. The very time that you're living in, with the very experiences that you had, mean that you're going to make connections that other people just wouldn't make. But you've got to be getting that stream of ideas in order to make those connections. And might I suggest meditating, which puts your brain into an alpha wave state, which makes weirder connections between more remote areas of the brain. I didn't meditate for a very long time because it sounded so woo-woo-y, and then finally I met a Navy SEAL who made me feel cool about meditating, and I finally did it and was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because it lets you calm your nervous system down and your brain begins making really unique connections. Whenever I read a book, I actually say to myself, be open to being changed by this information. It's incredible to me how many people encounter a book, an idea, a speaker, a movie, whatever, and it's amazing, and they go out and they're jazzed and they tell people about it, but they're not actually changed by it. They don't actually go out and act in accordance with that new piece of information. And at the end of the day, this is all going to boil down to execution. It's all going to boil down to your ability to do it, and to do it really well. And you're going to have to do things, create habits in order to make sure that they stick. Everyone needs an ego. Everyone needs self-esteem. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. And the crazy thing, when you really stop and think about suicide, and this is a new obsession of mine, if you stop and think about suicide, what has happened? That person believes, falsely, but they believe that they'll never be happy again, that they'll never feel good about themselves again. And that's why it's referred to as a permanent solution to a temporary problem, because that will pass. But in that moment, it feels like it couldn't ever go away. So we need to find things that make us feel good about who we are, because when you lose a sense of feeling good about who you are, life truly feels hopeless. So that's critical. And people often talk about, to stay away from an ego, to not pride yourself on things. But I'm telling you, that person prides themselves on not having an ego. And so it becomes what you pride yourself on is absolutely incredible. Grit. The biggest part about grit is sustained effort over time. If you lose interest quickly in something, once or twice, no big deal. It is what it is. You realize that it wasn't your thing. But if you lose interest over and over and over and over and over, and you always only enjoy the first 6 months of a business, and then you want to move on, you lose interest very quickly, you need to work on developing your grit, being able to sustain that over time. Because building any business, you're going to encounter hard things. You need to be able to do those hard things, focusing on the hard things. In fact, I try to start every day with one of the hardest things, to get it out of the way, to remind myself that I'm willing to attack that. How do I find my passion? The good news is, passion is not something that's handed to you. It is not a lightning bolt moment. It's another nice, simple mathematical equation. First of all, you need to identify your areas of interest. Everybody's interested in something. And I find the big problem is people stop themselves because they say, yeah, well, the thing that I'm interested in couldn't possibly be a business. So let's take video games back in the 80s. Back when everybody thought that video games were a joke, you're ruining your brain, it's like intellectual candy, kids get off the computer, go play outside, Nintendo's a joke, it's ridiculous. And then we have an entire industry now that's born up around video games that has made untold numbers of millionaires. And more people now watch esports, the finale of League of Legends, than watch the finales, I think, of all major sports combined. It's crazy. They fill arenas. That was somebody who said, this is something I love. It's something I want to be around. It is an area of interest, and I don't care if other people tell me that it can't be a business. It's what I want to be around. With enough ingenuity and enough forethought into what actually can be a business, because some things can't, innovate. There's so many other problems that people are facing. There's so many other things that they want, that they need from your company. And if you're putting the resources behind developing that stuff, then you're ultimately going to win, because there is only one thing that wins, and that's value. And if you're delivering value, people will come to you time and time again. And if you fail to deliver value, then you will go away. Simple as. You need to gain mastery in it. During the process of gaining mastery, you'll find out whether you actually like that thing enough to become great at it. It is my belief, whatever it is you set out to do as a business, there should be one litmus test. You should be able to ask and affirmatively answer the following question: do I want to know more about this than anyone else in the world? Don't get into something unless you plan to be the best. That's my piece of advice. I know that's not going to sit well with everybody. But if you want to have the passion to make something big, to make big change, it's got to be something that you believe in beyond reasonable doubt. It's got to be something you've just got to make happen. So ask yourself, do I want to know more about this than anyone else? Because you're going to have to get better at it than anyone else if you want to be excellent and deliver on the promise. The only path to excellence is to truly become an expert. The only path to excellence is to actually get good at something. These days, in a hyper-connected world where within minutes of an interaction with you, your product, whatever, someone can have a global audience and tell people what they think, that product better be awesome. It starts with the willingness to persist long after it's boring. It starts with the ability to focus on your end customer long after you're exhausted. It starts with the ability to think about those people that you really want to serve when you're scared and have no idea how you're going to pull it off. But you chose to believe that you could do it. You chose to believe that. And because you chose to believe that, you were able to achieve excellence. It doesn't matter who you are today. It really doesn't. If you feel like you're incapable of something, maybe you are today. But just because you're incapable of something today doesn't mean that you're not capable of learning that thing. So it's not about who you are today. It's about who you want to become and the price you're willing to pay to get there. And I promise you, the day that you're willing to pay any price, you'll achieve what you want to achieve.